Hi, I'm Bowen, and welcome back to The Good Place. Get it? Because in the show, the Good Place was actually the bad place, and last time I said the bad place, but that would have... Anyways, please comment your thoughts throughout the video. Just the one thing I ask is that you keep it respectful, just generally you have to say, but also with each other. And if you like the content, please like and subscribe, and if you really like it, you could do me a favor and share it. Today, we're going over part 3 of a series looking at problems impacting the United States and the West as a whole. If you want to see more of this content, I also do a show that is bipartisan, sometimes moderate, kind of fluctuates between the two, and is a lot more lighthearted than the stuff we go over in this series. So if you want to watch that, or if you want to see more of this series, or both, then subscribe, my guys. I would love for you guys to. Anyways. Today, we're talking about non-citizen voting. In 2025, 148 House Democrats voted against a bill to prohibit non-US citizens from voting in DC elections. That bill passed 266 to 148 and now still must pass the Senate. It would bar non-citizens from voting in DC elections and overturn the DC Non-Citizen Voting Act of 2022 that allows non-citizens to vote in DC elections and hold elected positions if they've lived in the district for at least 30 days. Let's, real quick, think about the actual implications of that. Say, we're going to go extreme here. Say a terrorist from the Middle East is given entry into the country, lives in DC for 30 days, then other people from outside the country can vote in an election for him to hold an official position. Yeah, I don't like the sound of that, personally. Anywho, federal law states that it is unlawful for non-citizens to vote in federal elections and establishes the publishment of a fine, 1 year in prison, or both for the violation of the law under the Illegal Immigration Reform and Immigration Responsibility Act of 1966. This includes elections for president, vice president, president-elector, members of the Senate, members of the House of Representatives, delegates from the District of Columbia, or the resident commissioner. So, in none of those elections is a non-citizen allowed to vote, and if they do, they could get up to a year in prison and a fine, or both. All right. Seems a little lenient for protecting our democratic system, but okay. According to research, non-citizen voting in federal elections is considered rare. However, the data is extremely scattered, with a proven record of the information in voter rolls being inaccurate, particularly in heavy blue areas such as California, New York, and DC, where there are higher populations of non-citizens. For example, over the last couple of years, dead people, dogs, people who have never existed, individuals from the homelessness population underneath fake names, non-citizen, and counts of people voting multiple times, all in one election, have come up. The Heritage Foundation found 85 cases of non-citizen voting in federal elections from 2002 to 2023. A North Carolina internal audit found 41 cases of green card holders who voted in an election. A similar audit in Georgia showed 20 suspected non-citizens on the voter rolls. Alabama found 1,177 voters on the rolls who were non-citizens. A mistake in Oregon's automatic voter registration system through the state's Driver and Motor Vehicle Services was revealed to have caused 1,561 people to be mistakenly added to the state voter rolls who had not provided proof of U.S. citizenship. Meaning, Occam's razor, some of them were non-citizens and they were put on the voter rolls. NPR used these figures to contrast them against state and national populations to show the percentage of total votes in federal elections. It came under about 1%. From that, their article provides the framing that this is a non-issue. It is a negligent issue, and it is entirely blown out of proportion from the right. But that's just federal law and federal elections. Federal law makes it punishable, and federal elections, sure, maybe it's about 1%. Who really knows? Because the data is extremely limited, with very little proper research and very little exploration into the implications and exact categorization of these individuals. Local and state elections, however, are at the whim of the people within those localities and states. California, Maryland, and Vermont all have localities that allow for non-citizen voting, including DC, which also allows for non-citizen voting. California has 2 localities, San Francisco and Oakland. What is so important about San Francisco and Oakland? Both of them are economic hubs for the state. Maryland has 16 localities. Maryland is a tiny state positioned right beside DC, with 16 localities that allow for non-citizen voting. Vermont has 3. 5 states currently have measures that could further allow for it on the ballot right now, and only 18 out of the 50 states have strictly prohibited it. According to the Pew Research Center, over 28 million people were living in the US in 2023 and were not citizens of the United States. That is a disgustingly large number, including 11.9 million permanent residents living in the US with legal position, 2.1 million temporary residents, and approximately 14 million immigrants living in the US without legal permission. That means that the majority of the 28 million people in 2023 were not legal immigrants, and the majority of the 28 million people who were non-citizens were not legally here. The majority of them. Or, I guess, not majority, but the largest category. Okay. Make sure I speak right here. All right. The question of voter fraud has been a roundabout conversation for a long time. The issue of non-citizens voting has been just as roundabout, but much more heated. Mainstream conversations focus on federal elections and completely ignore the local ones. Local elections, which in some areas openly allow for non-citizens to vote. Not just to vote, but in more localities than just DC are they allowed to also hold office. Let's talk about history real quick. The Roman Empire, in the East specifically, fell due to foreign intervention and interference. However, in only extremely rare cases, and for their service to the state, not simply just because, were people allowed to hold elected office if they weren't citizens. The United States itself is built as a constitutional republic, meaning it is a form of representative democracy. How does it represent the interests of U.S. citizens to allow non-U.S. citizens to vote or hold elected position? It doesn't. It genuinely doesn't. Throughout time, from China to England, foreign involvement has proven disastrous. Washington himself in his farewell address gave a lengthy warning about it in multiple forms. The current administration has proposed a solution to the United States federal elections to be completely secure, no questions asked. The SAVE Act, a piece of legislation aimed at mandating voter ID. The left-wing establishment and the general socialist populace have raged against this piece of legislation, going as far as to state, and I wish I was making this up, that the immutable characteristics of individuals are determining factors for whether or not they are even competent enough to obtain a voter ID, despite there already being needs for IDs in multiple different forms for most of necessary life, including things like to drive, to fly, to lead the country, and to buy a long list of goods. To avoid beating around the bush at all about this, the primary argument against the SAVE Act is the infantilization of groups based on race and sex for things that are necessary for normal adult life in the United States. I don't know about you guys, but I find that pretty disgusting, quite frankly. And, not to mention, the SAVE Act only applies to federal elections, not state and local. It is so telling that these conversations focus primarily on federal elections, because if we talk about the state and local, it becomes a much more relevant and much more exposed issue, where it is not just happening, but legalized. Local elections are more important for the individual than state elections, and state elections are more important for the individual than federal elections, just as the state of Virginia right now. Okay? Most people are obsessed with federal elections, and some with state elections. Almost none care about their local elections, and those are the most important ones. Those are the ones determining your zoning. Those are the ones determining certain and most of the taxes you pay. Those are the ones that are going to most importantly impact the economy in your local area. Those elections write laws for you specifically. So when you allow non-citizens to vote and hold office in those local elections, you are putting your individual life in the way of people who do not represent your interests. Many people couldn't tell you anything about their local elections. Local elections that for some could directly involve massive fraud or even legalized activities that are directly in opposition in representing the citizens in that locality. It would appear that the left side of the establishment has an interest in maintaining the status quo of restrictions, or regulations rather, that enable a margin of non-citizen voting in even federal elections, and to continue to allow legal non-citizen voting and holding offices in specific localities. It would also appear that while on the federal level, the right-wing side of the aisle is only willing to act on the minimum necessary to appeal to its base. Because if the establishment right was really concerned about non-citizen voting, they would be able or be working to find ways to address it when it comes to state and local elections, not just federal ones. Thank you for watching, and remember to comment your thoughts and opinions on today's topic. Just keep it respectful. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and God bless.